Well, if you're accustomed to watching my videos, you might be shocked to see what I'm covering in this episode, so stay tuned. Y'all, I finally bit the bullet and bought original set of shocks that have been rebuilt by a professional, and they work great. They seem to work great as far as 94-year-old rebuilt shocks are concerned, and I'm very happy to put them on. My car had an old piston style shock, a tube shock on it. That was only one that was on it, on the front driver's side. The other three wheels had no shock on it, and so I'm used to driving this car with no shocks. To me, I was shocked to find how beautiful the old Houdaille shocks really are. I know they say they don't really work all that well compared to what we're used to now, but my diesel truck I drive in the modern day is pretty shaky, and I almost feel like now that my Model A drives as good or better than it. And it's a 2001, so I feel like I'm working my way up in society here in Pumpkin Town. So to fully appreciate the beauty and artistry of the Houdaille shock, if you can get Renee to zoom in here a little bit, you'll see it attached here. This is where I had to unattach the old tube shock that was all over the place. So these are reproduction links, but everything else, and this is a reproduction arm, but that's an original Houdaille shock all the way around. Now, because my leaf springs are pretty bad, it doesn't have a lot of springiness to it, but at least you can get some feel for what kind of action's going on there on those shock arms. Okay, I'm going to start with taking the back wheels off, and going to start by loosening them up first. So remove both back wheels, and I'm chalking up the front tires. So after taking the tire off, you can look back in here and see the two holes on the rear that the shock is supposed to mount to. And behind it, the ball here has the old, so taking a pair of wire cutters, I just snipped off the old link caps here, the middle cap, which, as you can see, is in desperate need of replacement. So this car hasn't had any major work done on it in the last 40, 50 years. So I'm just going to take my wire brush here, and kind of clean up all this Titanic looking stuff. Okay, so next I've got 4 original shocks. Just never had the chance to put them back on. So you can see here it says Houdaille Engineer Incorporated, and he actually marked them for me, left rear for this one, which is also be these would be the ones marked clockwise, and so these are right ones for the July 1930 Tudor Sedan. So I'm using these shock bolt mounting bolts, the A-18015MB from Smith & Jones out of Columbia. I'll leave a link in the description below. Okay, so I got both of those bolts pushed in, and I've got to twist that one a little bit to meet the frame a little bit better. Okay, so on the inside now, with an 11/16 wrench, I'm tightening those bolts up with the lock washer on the inside here. Okay, so now that the rear left shock is installed, I'm going to put the shock arm on, and just take note that the rear shock arms are straight, whereas the front ones are curved. So this is a rear shock arm, brand new. I just bought this from Smith & Jones in Columbia, South Carolina. So I'm just going to slip it on over here like that. So it's going to generally point this direction. So next I'll need the mounting bolts for the shock arm right here. It comes with a castle nut, and it even comes with a cotter pin. It's A-18047/52MB, also from Smith & Jones, Columbia, South Carolina. Just going to slip that through like that, and put the nut on the bottom there. Okay, so after getting the nut and bolt in, push the cotter pin through, and we just need to
bend this cotter pin over and we're all set.
Okay, so I just removed the filler plug and it was slammed full of oil. Just make sure yours are full to the bottom of the hole there with shock fluid.
So now I'm working it up a little bit and down just to kind of get all the air cavities out of this thing. Next I have here the shock links, tubular type A-18063-BS. And you want to get the tubular type here, and you want to make sure if you can possibly get originals. If you can get originals, I've heard that they work better, but I've also heard that this type here works as well. So I got this from Smith & Jones. I'll leave it in the description below. Okay, next we want to get the perch seals and the perch caps. These are metal and these are rubber. So the rubber seals are A-18058S. The rubber seal, which goes inside here, and then the metal tubular link metal cap A-18059, and I got both of those from Smith & Jones in Columbia. I'll leave a link in the description below. So there's the rubber part, fits down in the metal part like that. So it's easiest to have these put together as one unit, make sure that they fit in each other right, and then put a little dishwashing soap on that and slide it over.
Okay, so next on the shock link here, we have the, in this order, I'm going to show you it before I put it in, the end cap here on this end, then the two ball joints or ball caps there, and the ball goes in between, then the spacer, then the spring, then two more ball caps go into the bottom of this here. So that's the order that it goes into the shock link there. So this goes up top, this goes down bottom.
Okay, so before putting all the pieces together, I took the end cap out, and I'm gonna pack this with grease pretty good from my grease gun here. Fill it up as good as I can first. So it's virtually impossible to videotape that because I had grease all over my hands, but I packed it full of grease. So there it is installed. And notice it's about a 15-degree angle, just like Les Andrews' book says. If it's straight up, then either your springs are overloaded or your springs are sagging too much. So lastly, I'm going to take this 7/16 wrench. I'm just going to tighten up the grease fitting here. Before I put the wheel back on, I'm going to go ahead and squirt it real good with grease till it squeezes out the bottom. And it looks like, from what I can tell, all that's in good order. Okay, so here's the right rear shock installed. Same technique as before. This one went a little easier. Hopefully the next one will go even easier. Okay, so now having got the back two done, I'll come to the front here and gonna jack up the front and put it on jack stands, and then gonna take off the front passenger tire. Okay, so now we're on the right front. The ball here still feels to be in good shape. There's no oblongness about it, and it still has a little bit of a flat end on it. So I've got the right front one here. I've already put the two mounting bolts through, the flat part touching against the body. We'll try to get this in place, hopefully without removing the brake rod. I was able to fit them through there. Now I'm going to take and try with my hands on this side to go ahead and put the lock washers and nuts on. Okay, so I think it's actually easier to tighten these bolts down from inside the engine compartment here than this to try to get under this thing. So that's what I'm doing here with about a 2-inch extension. Okay, so now we're going to do again, we're going to put the rubber piece inside of that metal cap and make sure that the hole lines up with the hole here. We're going to spread dishwashing soap on. Okay, so I did end up having to take the brake rod out. I think it's just easier. And I got the shock arm to slip on here.
So now I just got the pin through the top here, and they're both fitting in. So I'm gonna put that cotter key in and tighten everything up. Tighten up this grease fitting to where it'll point either front or back, so I can get to it easier with my grease gun. Okay, so I went back and I painted all the parts that I had put on that hadn't been painted yet. Probably should have done it before, but I did it later. I got all the cotter pins back in the brake rod reattached. So I think we're ready to put the wheels and the tires back on. So in summary on this video, I would just like to say that yes, they weren't cheap, but they were to me worth it, because a modern shock underneath of the fenders just look bad. And why go into the effort to buy a 94-year-old used car and try to fix it up and then Farby it to death with some kind of a weird looking funky reproduction tube shock or some other concoction. So you know what I'm going to say, if you like this type of material, please consider subscribing. It don't cost anything and it helps out our channel, and it'll help you see the next video that I post in this series about the Ford Model A car from 1928 to 1931. Thank y'all for watching all the way here from Pumpkin Town, South Carolina.